browser. And I'm very pleased to announce that today we're going to be talking with Scott Dickson. Hey, Scott. So Scott is a first-time interview for us. So Scott, we definitely have some questions prepared, but you want to maybe give a quick introduction about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So Scott Dickson, Chief Technology Officer, 20 Digits Inc. We are part of a larger enterprise called Nest International, which does integrated facilities management. And we were a startup that the owners created to, fill the technology needs in the integrated facilities management. Facilities management meaning multi-site locations that have HVAC, electrical, plumbing, cleaning, floor care, construction needs, usually larger organizations that need people locally to take care of whatever location happens to be in a specific market. What's interesting, the crossover with you guys is most of the providers that go out and perform the services are very small businesses. So it's an interesting dynamic that maybe we can talk to as we go.
Yeah, I like the small businesses. I mean, they, as Dennis was saying earlier, they make up 130,000. So it's definitely a lot of them out there. But with your background and of course, becoming a CTO, what actually got you started in technology?
Going way back, I actually was supposed to be a sales engineer, but for a manufacturing company, and I was given ownership of a very small data center, if you will, because they didn't have any in-house technology staff. And that was like day one that I started, first job out of college. I was in that space and I never left it. So I'm coming up on 30 years, not to give my age away, but I spent my entire career there with end-to-end system stuff, running a business and all the aspects of technology that are in that. Most of my focus has been on software development and software engineering, a lot of enterprise integration work, but there's all the various aspects that go into technology are something that interests me because it all has to fit together and work together in order to bring about the, whatever the business outcomes that we're trying to achieve. So that's sort of been my passion, and continue to probe areas where I can make a larger and larger impact.
Nice. Yeah, we definitely share that. And you look great for 30 years in the industry.
So do you. No,
Thanks. Yeah. I was telling Dennis the baldness doesn't do well with a backdrop because it cuts into my head. So we've never actually had the honors to talk to someone in the CTO position before. What exactly are like the roles and responsibilities of that, or that you bring to the office every day? Like, kind of what's the main focus?
Yeah, no, that's a few things. One is making sure that the overall architecture of the technology in the organization, from soup to nuts, matches with the mission of the business, but also matching that with the personnel that you have. I feel like a strong, connection between the architecture and the way that the organization is organized, the way you build out teams, and the folks that you have in those various roles. It's also creating a vision and allowing everyone to work towards some constant, purpose in the future where, you can kind of have to remind people like, hey, we're in the day-to-day here, but we're moving in this direction, and this is the reason why. So I find it's my responsibility to communicate that a lot to the entire organization, and also constantly monitor to see does that have to change? Does our long-term, target need a pivot for, changes in the business dynamic and things of that nature? Going 100% remote and being 100% remote changes the aspect of certain portions of what we do. As an example, we didn't really plan well for a pandemic, but luckily we were prepared for the entire organization to be remote overnight. It's things of that nature. So that's most of what I do in a smaller firm, because we are 20 digits is we're less than 20 people total. I also have to get down in the weeds quite a bit. In a large organization, that wouldn't be the case, but I actually find that rewarding. I still like to get my hands dirty. So, yeah. But that's not always the case in this particular role. It's what I like about the role where I am.
No, that's good, because you came from kind of a much larger org and see that change.
Yeah.
So how do you stay on top of some of those trends? Like, obviously the pandemic caught everyone by surprise. That's not a normal, but how do you typically stay on?
So you do a tremendous amount of reading, and I really try to spend a great deal of time following certain key folks. I don't know if you know the name Gene Kim, but I religiously follow not just himself, but he interacts with a large group of individuals that are real thought provoking. I find that I'm more and more ravenous as time goes on, just trying to keep pace with where they see things going. And then in addition to that, obviously there's a huge amount of information that's available at our fingertips any day. I have to sometimes pull back though, because you have to coordinate, where your trends are going, but how does that align with what you're attempting to do? You should not be pursuing technology trends for the sake of that. They have to align more with where you feel the organization needs to go. There's some developments recently that I've really gravitated towards, but it's very difficult sometimes to integrate that in with what the day-to-day needs. And that's another big aspect of the job, creating a transitional architecture to go from where you are today to where you need to go into the future. So it's all with a grain of salt, I guess. You learn as much as you can about what's happening out there, but you can't rush in because it is changing so rapidly that you will never spend time delivering on anything if you aren't close.
And I also think it's a really good point. Not every trend should be jumped on by every business. Like there seems to be a look into it. Does this trend actually make sense for my business? Is it something we can handle? Is it something we can implement? Don't just jump on every new thing that comes open because someone said so, right? I mean, there's that side of that too.
There is no, that's actually very, very pertinent. Part of my responsibility is to ensure that just because a certain technology, and it could be a SaaS solution that's easy to get involved with, that may have abilities that you want. But if your organization can't absorb that and take advantage of that and bring that to bear, that doesn't mean that it's of any value to you as an organization. It's not just the ability of the solution, it's the ability of the organization to use that to a business advantage. And I find that it's too easy for folks to hear about solutions. And obviously the vendor of said solution is marketing those to
pushing
various decision makers, right?
Yeah.
You have to be very cautious about, can you actually leverage that thing for what it was intended for in an advantageous way for the business, and align that with your strategic goals. It sounds much easier than it usually is. It's far more difficult to gain adoption within the external and internal user community and bring it to bear and plug it into your existing large system, right? There's a lot of work that bring that about, and it's often sold as much easier than it truly is. That's something that I find is very dangerous, which I feel like someone like yourself understands that deeply.
I mean, we've unfortunately been in situations where any type of software as a service company will often kind of sell these amazing packages to these small businesses, but they don't have the funds or they don't have kind of the infrastructure to even handle what they saw from the sales teams. So it's funny when you were starting your career in sales engineering, I know that that's a big goal of sales engineering is like sales engineering, blow them away with like everything that this system can do, and then leave it up to the adoption or the implementation team to kind of pick up the slack or push it over the finish line. But I mean, I very much agree with you. And something I hold close to my heart is not setting up your clients for failure from day one. Make sure that whatever you propose is something you can actually bring to fruition for them. But,
and in fact, I often the best and brightest in an organization, they put out there at front to close the deal. And then the folks that are part of the implementation aren't necessarily as well-versed and as deep. That should be the exact opposite.
Right. That's a good point.
It's counterintuitive. You want to sell, if we're not selling, if we're not closing deals, like, we're going to die as a business. But the reality is the success of the client and or the customer of whatever the solution is and for us, it can be an internal customer. We need to make sure that they're going to be able to take advantage of this. It's not right to sell someone to go down a path that they will not be able to be successful with in the end. And I often find the hardest part is gaining adoption, individual user adoption, motivating them to actually want to do this and finding the right mix of enjoyment of using whatever the product is to bring about the right outcomes. So yeah, I find that it's a problem, and it's software like SaaS solutions have become so prolific that it's impossible for very small businesses without a lot of resources to make decisions to navigate those waters. But it's not just smaller business. As businesses grow, I feel that doesn't go away. There's larger organizations selling their solutions to those larger organizations. And the problem doesn't abate even at the larger levels. But yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. I not a great story, but I remember my first car, I was able to buy it on a discount, and I was really excited about it. And when I went to pick it up, I learned that it was a stick shift, and I didn't know how to drive stick shift, but that was conveniently not advertised because most people drive automatic, so they were giving me a discount. So ended up buying the car and learning stick shift, but much different for someone with technology. You can't exactly just force people to learn something if they're not comfortable or.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Do you do a lot of adoption in your role, or is that mostly like change management or training teams?
No. So one of the things that we've noticed is it's important for our technology to be used by the folks that are in the facilities that are being maintained. So a lot of clients are retailers. So you have like a store manager as a prime candidate for using our technology. A store manager isn't interested in a work order to have the preventative maintenance done for the HVAC system. Like that's not what their job is. Their job is to make sure that they're ready to sell to the clients, to their customers. And that is very meaningful because you can't assume that they're going to want to use your solution for anything other than it's my means of saying, hey, I have a major issue here. So gaining adoption to say, hey, we can take care of that problem with some technology. It doesn't work unless you can get somehow, some way for them to want to use it in certain circumstances. And so I would say that driving adoption of any technology solution is like almost the entire game early on. Until it becomes ubiquitous and everyone knows to use something, which in our case would be very rare. It's critical that you get usage versus the actual functionality behind the scenes. If you can't gain someone's, day in and day out wanting to use a solution that you provide, it doesn't provide any value. It doesn't matter how many features you build and how fantastic you make it. If no one uses it, it's useless. Right. That has become a larger focus. I would say in the last year, it was always, well, if we build it, they will come, right? And you just have to work on getting things out there into the space. Right. But it's actually a lot different. It's you have to ensure that they'll come before you spend too much time, money, and effort building it. Yeah. And it sort of turns things on its head. Highly recommend Eric Ries's The Lean Startup book. If you haven't read that, yeah. Fantastic. It talks to the fact that you could potentially not build anything and still learn if you have a viable product. But it's a really, really worthwhile read, and it sort of changes your mindset about, what's the journey of technology. And too often you build a lot and you don't know if that's even gonna, take off, and that's a waste of resources. And sure. So it's something that we're struggling to do, and we've really put a lot of emphasis on that. And I think going into next year, it's going to become even a stronger. How do you learn that you can really have something that's going to take off before you start backing it up with a huge amount of software engineering investment and infrastructure?
It's true. I mean, you've heard stories of these startups that fail because they just focus on more and more features. But the more and more features don't always equate to actual people adopting it or using it, or users. And it's a slippery slope. And the market research is pivotal, because you might think you have the greatest idea in the world, but to someone else that has a different use case or a different background or a different need, it falls flat, and then all of a sudden you're stuck.
Yep.
No. All right. So one more question for you. Well, actually two, because I did want to ask this. So one of the most important things that we're seeing right now is around security and making sure that we can keep people secure and safe. How do you handle security? And again, don't get into the details or give any of your secret sauce away. But
No. I will say this. Security is probably the most important aspect of my job. I don't like to talk about it a lot, but it displaces more of all the things we're trying to accomplish because it is so critical, and every day, every week, it becomes even more so. And others I've spoken to in similar roles across the country that seems to be the trend, that more and more consumption of your brain power and your effort and your time goes to security. We're actually, because we're a provider of solutions, we're going through something called SOC 2 compliance. It's system organization controls. And specifically, SOC 2 is the trust aspect. So it's security, our system security. So we've had to make major investments over the past 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, into our security fabric to ensure that what we're building out and delivering is, extraordinarily secure. And it's still an arms race, and you're still constantly making an investment in that. The frustrating piece is the clients that are desiring features, and the business who's desiring more features from a sales perspective, that they don't, that's way down on their list. They know it's important, but it's not top of mind, and they're having to wait because of the amount of investment in time and really heavy duty engineering too. It's not easy. That's not something that's a simple solution. That is where we've had some success with partnering with outside firms. We latched onto a company called Auth0, which I believe was acquired by Okta. Okay. But that company has actually really saved us, and we have been able to interact with them in a way that provides a highly secure solution for our product, without us having to do a huge amount of the heavy lifting down in the weeds of building the identity management and authorization and authentication work. But that being said, it's still very top of mind, and there's a lot of other things that go into running a highly secure operation. So that's part of this SOC 2 efforts. It's an investment. It's a business investment. I don't know if you could ever become a company of any substantial size without some investment in that. It's a major impact, but it's a necessity. I don't know. It's almost like the electricity or now internet connectivity to your organization. It's become one of those things that you cannot. It's a cost of doing business, and there's no way around it at this stage. So, and we're trying to get really good at it. And I feel like the more we gain the aptitude internally to deal with it and know the right types of resources externally to work with, the better we become, the more efficient we'll be at that, and hopefully the lower impact to the overall efforts we have it will become. So we'll see.
I mean, with you at the helm, I have no doubt.
Thanks for the shameless plug.
All right. So last question. What is your favorite piece of technology? And it could be a car, it could be a software.
Wow. That is my favorite piece of technology. This is going to sound ridiculous, but it's probably my MacBook Pro.
Okay, all right.
And the operating system and everything about it. I was, from almost all of my career up until probably about 2015-ish, I was a PC user, Windows, Microsoft, and I made a switch, and it was a very, very painful journey doing that, because so much of what your muscle memory and everything else that you had learned had to be changed. But I just, when I think about it, I literally marvel at it every day. And that's something to be said about something you use 7 days a week. And so it is it's a real impressive thing, and I don't say that lightly, because there's
Yeah.
literally billions of PCs, or billions of computer systems out there. The only negative to it is it's highly expensive. So it's hard to make it ubiquitous, but it really is something that I enjoy more than anything else.
And if
It's not
last.
novel, but it's it is something there.
That's
I
good.
look forward to self-driving automobiles, but I don't think that's ready yet. When that comes about and my car
might
can
take it.
Yeah. It's just I need to drive home from an Eagles game and my car can
Right.
do it, as waiting for an Uber. That'd be nice.
And then you
But
can
until
work
then-
on your MacBook Pro in the back seat.
Well, no, not after the game. That wouldn't be wise.
All right. Well, this has
right.
been great catching up with you, and thanks again for taking the time to join
No
us.
problem. Thank you, and the best of luck to you and to you both. Very excited to see how you guys do. Yeah, we're huge proponents of small businesses, and so as you move forward, and there may be ways for us to engage with you on behalf of our provider network, because a lot of them are very small businesses that would potentially benefit greatly from your services.
I will absolutely keep you in the loop.
Awesome.